Episode number 151. Welcome to All About Breastfeeding, the place where the girls hang out. I am your host, Lori Jill Eisenstadt, IBCLC, which stands for International Board Certified Lactation Consultant, and I help moms with breastfeeding. Today's show is being brought to you by allaboutbreastfeeding.biz. This is a place to go to for more information on how I can help support you with breastfeeding. You can also find lots of free handouts on breastfeeding related articles, and you can see what I have been writing about on my blog. I would like to extend a warm welcome to my newest listeners and want you to know that I appreciate you listening to the show and hope you are learning a lot about breastfeeding and enjoying listening to other moms' breastfeeding stories. I am so happy to have you with us. Today's interview is going to be a replay of one of my most popular shows, which also is the second podcast I ever recorded. In our show today, my friend Tressa talks about the home birth of her two daughters. She gives us a window into her postpartum life and talks about the difficulties she had. Tressa attempted to hold in her postpartum depression feelings, not even wanting to talk to her family about it. She tells us how a frank discussion with her husband led her to seek help and how she realized that this was the best decision she ever could have made. Tressa then brings us deeper into her family's life and tells us how she came to tandem nurse her daughters and what it meant to her and her family. I would like to invite you to send me an email if you have a tandem breastfeeding journey that you would like to share with All About Breastfeeding listeners. I have a space for just a few interviews this season on the subject of tandem nursing. So if you would like to be considered for an interview, please send an email to me at aabreastfeeding@hotmail.com and just put tandem nursing in this subject line. And then in the body, just give me a brief history of your experience. I will return your email in 24 hours. Please relax, listen, and enjoy today's show.
Very much a feminist, and I remember thinking to myself, I don't think I'll want to be a stay-at-home mom. I think I'll want to have a career. But I did not realize how strongly I would feel the need to not be separated from my children.
Balloons, bazookas, boobies, bosoms, boulders, cans, hooters, knockers, melons, honkers, jugs, rack, tatas, tits, torpedoes, guns, bust, doorknobs, coconuts, and our favorite one, the girls. Welcome to the All About Breastfeeding show, where your host, Lori, highlights mothers just like yourself and goes beyond the surface questions and digs deep so they share not only their joys and happiness in their daily breastfeeding life, but also their pain and struggles and how they worked through them.
Hi, everyone. This is Lori Jill Eisenstadt, IBCLC, and I am your host of All About Breastfeeding, the place where the girls hang out. Every host has their own personality, and as you can see, my personality comes shining through with that introduction. I'd love to welcome you to today's episode. My hope is that with every show and every story, you gain a new appreciation for mothers and babies and breastfeeding. You will want to go check out the show notes, which are on the website, for the various resources mentioned in each podcast. Stay tuned, and at the end of this show, I will make a contest announcement. We have a great show today. Let's get started. I would love to welcome our guest today, Tressa. She is a 42-year-old mother of two daughters who works as a French interpreter, and she volunteers as a Girl Scout leader and a PTSO leader. Tressa likes to read, camp, travel, and roller coaster riding, which is something I didn't know, and hanging out with friends and family. She has two daughters who are 10 and 12. Morgan and Sage. When she got pregnant with her second, nursing was still very important to her first daughter, Morgan. So she just kept right on nursing through her pregnancy and then tandem nursed the two girls until they just stopped on their own. We will be talking more about that in detail later, Tressa, but for right now, I'd love to welcome you to All About Breastfeeding, the place where the girls hang out, and where I'm glad you like to hang out because that's exactly what we're going to be doing now. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Lori. Happy to be here.
All right, so I would love to hear a little bit of background about what life was like for you in the family that you grew up in. Let's start with that.
Okay, well, I am the oldest of just me and my brother. My brother Jason is 4 years younger than me. We grew up with my mom and dad, Linda and Bill, for the most part here in Arizona, but we did start out, at least I started out in Hawaii because Dad was in the Navy. Then he went to grad school in Alabama, which is where Jason was born. And then when I was 5 and Jason was 1, we moved here to Arizona and, had a wonderful childhood.
You pretty much spent most of your life here in Arizona until you went to school, but then you went to Tucson. You still didn't go too far away until a little bit later on, right?
That's right. So I, was here in Northwest Phoenix or, the Valley from age 5 to age 18. And then I went to the University of Arizona in Tucson for 4 years. And that's when the fun began and got out of Dodge. I joined the Peace Corps and served in Africa and then did grad school in California, lived in Virginia, lived in here some more, here in Arizona some more, and then went to Pennsylvania. And now we're back.
Somewhere along the way, you met your handsome husband.
That's right. We met overseas in the Peace Corps.
All right. So when you were younger, did you have any thoughts about what you would do with your life? Because now that we've just dived just a little bit into it, it has been pretty varied once you got out of Arizona. So did you have any thoughts about what you'd be doing in your adult life?
When I was a very little kid, I had, different ideas of what I wanted to be when I grew up. And those included being a pilot and being a teacher and being an astronaut and, had lots of, fun ideas about that. But one thing I always thought is that I would be a young parent. My parents were young when they had us. They were in their early 20s when I was born. And I liked that, the fact that they, were younger parents. And I thought, I want to do the same thing. But then I became a young adult and I realized there was a lot to see and do for me anyway before taking that step. And so then I still didn't quite know what I wanted to do with myself. And in college, I realized, I really needed to study something that I truly enjoyed and not just study what I thought would make me a good income. And after switching my majors several times, landed on anthropology and French, which I just loved, as well as linguistics as a minor. But I still didn't know what I was going to do with that. And that's why I joined the Peace Corps, so I could go somewhere where French was spoken every day and really cement that in my brain. And it was after my service that I sort of realized, hey, translating and interpreting would be a way to use all of my training and knowledge in a practical way. And so that's the path I took and haven't looked back.
So you were very smart. You made a conscious decision to join the Peace Corps so that you could travel and learn French with the French.
Yes. Yeah. I wanted to, have that adventure, have something hands-on. My life had been all academics up until that point. And, I really wanted to get away from that and just make a difference in the world and, be working amongst people and try and help people at the same time, really make the French, more than just classroom French and, bring that real world element to it. Yeah. And delay having to make a decision about what to do with myself as a career.
Yeah, that's a very important part of that picture, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Just a little bit of a quick side note. What, if anything, did you observe about parenting in your travels that you felt like, when I become a parent, I'm never going to do that, or I really want to emulate that. And I'm not talking about growing up as a kid here and with your family. I'm talking about when you were traveling.
Oh, parenting is so different in Chad, which is the country that we were in Africa. And I can't extrapolate to all of Africa, but I have heard that it's, that some of it can be extrapolated. But I saw a very different style of bringing up children than what I had seen in my own culture in the United States. And some of it I liked and some of it I didn't like. And, something that I did like was that I saw parents being, or especially mothers, being very attached to their babies, literally strapping them on with a piece of cloth and, nursing whenever the baby or child wanted to without a second thought. And, nobody gave it a second thought. It was just what was done. On the other hand, I saw what seemed to me like adults treating children disrespectfully, ordering them around in a way that I wasn't accustomed to. And, saying things like, go get me a drink of water now, without a please or a thank you. And the children were expected to just obey. And so there were some things that I thought, hey, I like that, but I don't want to do that. And, just things that are very different from American childhood.
So did they move from that very warm and fuzzy and attachment parent lifestyle as a newborn to a very young baby to that switch that you just talked about, treating children like, please, go get me that? It sounds like there was a very abrupt shift.
Yeah, I'm not sure at what age that starts happening because, toddlers and what we would think of as preschoolers weren't ordered about like that. But when they were probably maybe grade school age is when I started to see, that they were expected to, fetch and carry and obey and just take orders. I mean, there was still lots of time for play and whatnot, but there was still a lot of work and strain and just this sort of, relationship where I give the commands and you follow them and there are no questions asked.
So actually sort of like in the U.S., the Dr. Spock kind of parenting, that children should be seen but not heard.
Yeah, that's pretty true, yeah.
So how does everything that you've done so far compare to what you're currently doing with your career and with your family?
Well, I guess I never thought too much about how to balance everything until I had to, I'm very much a feminist, and I remember thinking to myself, oh, I don't think I'll want to be a stay-at-home mom. I think I'll want to have a career. But I did not realize how strongly I would feel the need to not be separated from my children. And so, and that really started during pregnancy, where I started thinking to myself, I am not going to want to be apart from this baby, and we're going to have to find a way to make that work. And so we did. And although I had been doing a lot of traveling as an interpreter, interpreting for the State Department, and they would send me all over for 2 and 3 and 6 weeks at a time, I thought to myself, that is not going to work for me. So we found other ways, and I found ways to work with my children, having them with me, or work from home, or on those times when I felt it was okay to be separated from them, find a way for them to be with daddy or another family member, that I could trust, that they loved and that loved them. And so I am still interpreting, and I do a lot of things on the side, like teaching French and being the Girl Scout leader and being involved in my children's school. But I've found a way to make it all work where I can still be present for my children. And that's very important to me.
And a happy mommy too, right?
Yes.
Which is very important also, right?
Yes.
I am like an investigative reporter, and I have been known to go off script and sometimes ask what other people or my kids might say too nosy of a question or too deep of a question. So I just want you to know before we go any further that if I say anything that you're not too happy with, all you need to do is say, I think I'll pass on that, Lori, and I will edit that out. I will edit the question out, and nobody will know any different. So you okay with that, Tressa?
That sounds good. Thanks.
All right. So I also want to do something a little bit different. And just for 30 seconds, I want to kind of shake the parenting and stuff that we've talked about and career stuff and go to a different place. So I would love for you to just close your eyes for 30 seconds. And I'm going to ask you to just take a deep breath in. And on the slow, gradual breath out, just relax your shoulders, your arms, relax your forehead, your jaw, your tongue. And just take one more deep breath in. And on the out breath, just kind of do a self-check and just relax your mind and body. All right, so you're still with me, Tressa?
I'm still with you, but that was very relaxing.
Wonderful. So I would love to know, because the whole world of breastfeeding is of such interest to me, do you have any idea, did you ever have the discussion with your mom? Were you breastfed?
I was not breastfed. I remember talking about this with her long before, I thought about my own plans. And she told me that she tried. And I was born in a hospital, an Army hospital in Honolulu, and she tried to nurse me a couple of times, and it wasn't really working out. And so the nurses said, well, if you're not going to nurse, we need to get you on hormonal birth control so you won't get pregnant again. And they immediately put her on birth control. And then they said, oh, and by the way, now that you're on this, you cannot nurse. You need to bottle feed. And so that's what happened with me. And I think that she felt bad about that and sorry that that's the way that happened. By the time my brother came around 4 years later, she successfully nursed him for a long time, no problems.
Wonderful. That's pretty interesting. The more often than not, I hear that mothers, if they had a hard or difficult time or were talked out of it, more frequently than not, they just feel like their first baby, that everything was okay, and they just don't even try the second time around. So that's fabulous.
Yeah, I think it is too.
Your first breastfeeding experience with Morgan. I met you when Morgan was just a little babe in arms, but not necessarily when you first started breastfeeding her, like I already knew you was Sage. So I would love to hear about your first breastfeeding experience. And as mothers, I think we experience a full range of emotions. Even if breastfeeding goes really well and we have the best of support, there's usually a lot of stuff that goes on hormonally, and just I think it's a big shock to our system, having a new baby and not getting enough sleep. And there's a lot of things involved. So please bring us back to that time and tell us about how that went.
So Morgan was, when Morgan was born, I knew that I would nurse her. And I actually remember being a little frustrated that I couldn't immediately put her to the breast, even though I had a wonderful birth at home. Her cord was just a little bit on the short side. And so once I gave birth to her, she was in my arms, but couldn't quite reach to my breast. And we couldn't find the clamp to clamp and cut the cord. It was missing from my birth kit. So we had to wait a little bit until we found something to use and until I delivered the placenta, and then I could finally put her to the breast. And I remember thinking, is this how it's supposed to be? Because she was really just sort of checking things out, didn't really get down to the business of latching on and nursing right that instant. And my doula, who is a midwife in training, said, don't worry, as long as she's kind of smelling things and licking and putting her lips to it, that's a wonderful beginning. So I had that great encouragement right off the bat, and within the hour, she was nursing. And I remember that I got sore and, very sore. And I did not get any help for that, for correcting the latch that was probably causing that. But luckily for us, we figured it out, and we managed to get a better latch, and that soreness went away, and we had a great nursing relationship. we had, like you said, all of the range of emotions, and we had something tragic happen within a couple of days of her birth, in that my grandmother, who was en route to visit us and to meet Morgan and her other grandchild, who'd just been born 6 months before, my nephew Tyler, she died as she traveled from New Orleans to Phoenix. She died in New Mexico. And I mean, that was such a tragedy, and that lent such an aura of stress and sadness to all of us, right then and there. But having Morgan in my arms and nursing her was a comfort through all of that. And we did very well. I remember lots and lots of leaking, lots of wet shirts and even shorts and sheets and everything, lots of milk everywhere. But, Morgan was a great nurser. She loved it. She couldn't get enough of it. She was at the breast, for most of the day and night, it seemed like. And she would just go and go and go and fall asleep, but keep going in her sleep. And I just let her. I had the luxury of being home with her, and I just let her go and go. And I remember Father's Day happened shortly after her birth, and my dad and my brother were over at our house to celebrate, and Morgan was in my arms nursing for an hour or something, and my dad saying, "Is she still nursing?" I said, "Yes, she is." And that was sort of typical of the nursing relationship between me and Morgan. She would go as long as I would let her, for the most part, at least in those early days and weeks, I would say.
When she was nursing what seemed like night and day, was there any part of you that felt that there must be something wrong with this? In other words, she gets the right side, she gets the left side, kind of wash your hands of it, change her diaper, hold her up, and she should be happy and settled for whatever, 2 or 3 hours. And it certainly sounds like she was not following the textbook. And what I find with lots of new moms is they're frustrated, partly from sleep deprivation, but also they just think that there's something wrong with that, and or they're kind of cool with it, but those messages from other people are letting them think there's something wrong with that. Did you just have this great intuition and you just kind of knew? And I know you said you had the luxury. So having the luxury is one thing, but having the emotional capacity to do so, especially against what might have been the norm or what other people were telling you, did that come into play for you at all?
It did a little bit, for example, my dad's comment, "Is she still nursing?" That was, I got that every once in a while. Like, that's not normal, is it? And, for the most part, I was just confident. I had read a lot during pregnancy. I had read a lot published by La Leche League, for example, and I knew there were different styles of nursers and different, types of babies and, all those various labels, high needs and stuff like that. And I just thought, this is Morgan and this is what she needs. And she's doing fine. She's happy when she's nursing and she gets plenty of sleep. That's one of my hangups is I was worried, are they getting enough sleep? And when I nursed her to sleep and let her hang out at the breast while she slept great. So that sort of put that fear to rest, are they sleeping enough? And I was, once I got past that soreness I talked about, I was comfortable. It wasn't hurting me at all. And I just, really felt confident that this was okay. And she was doing well as far as all of her milestones and her weight and all of that, and producing plenty of diapers and plenty of, she spit up all the time. And I just thought, okay, whatever, she's doing fine. This is all right. And then after some time went by, I did start to realize, hey, I really can't get anything done. We had a double luxury in that Mark was off that summer. He was in med school at the time. And that particular summer, he had a couple of months off with no school, no classes, and no rotation. So both of us were home with our new baby. So the chores could get done because he was around. But then after he went back to school, and couldn't, be at home as much, I started to realize I can't even empty the dishwasher, because she's always wanting to nurse. And I hadn't figured out baby wearing by that time either. And also I started to think maybe instead of 17 naps a day, we could try and sort of coalesce this into 3 or something like that. And I remember keeping track of her sleeping and waking and trying to find patterns and seeing if I could somehow, fit our nursing and our sleeping into patterns that would give me a little bit of a longer stretch without her at the breast. But I didn't fear that I was doing anything harmful to her.
And you were not, sounds like you were not worried when you talk about, you're just blissfully nursing your baby and she falls asleep and you're just kind of hanging out with her. There was no part of you that was concerned that you were spoiling her, creating a bad habit, those kinds of things?
I didn't worry about spoiling, but I did worry about her being able to sleep without me. I thought, when will she learn that, and, how long will I have to be her, pacifier for her to sleep with the breast either in her mouth or right next to it. And, I did kind of wonder about that and, wonder if she would, if I was, making it harder for her to learn to soothe on her own.
And yet you just kept on going. And it sounds like, because of course you do have all of these questions, and as a parent, we're not really sure about a lot. We're going by intuition, but it sounds like you had enough, your intuition was strong enough that while you had some questions, you just kept reassuring yourself in many ways that you have mentioned that she was doing well. She was gaining, she was happy. And it sounds like as long as intuitively you could see those things, that you didn't stress out about the other aspects of this. And it sounds like you had to get a little practical once Mark went back to doing his thing, and you were wondering, the lovely things like when you're going to empty the dishwasher or even go pee by yourself, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I did have a good amount of confidence because she was doing so well. So I thought, hey, we're doing something right. And, I've never been overly fond of housework anyway. So I could let things go and it didn't bother me too much.
Wonderful. And this is really going to come into play as we move along in your breastfeeding and mothering journey, because I want All About Breastfeeding listeners to really key into what your early breastfeeding was like, the frequent nursing, baby sleeping on you, again, because a lot of people have fears about that. And they're going to follow you through with this interview here and see how things have panned out. For right now, I would love to know about Sage, your early breastfeeding with Sage. And so now you have Morgan. Is she still nursing when you're pregnant?
Yes. So when I found out that I was pregnant with Sage, I think Morgan was about 17 months old. And I thought to myself, there's no way that this kid is at all ready to stop. It was just still a very big part of our lives. But I knew from learning about anatomy and physiology that my milk supply might dip or go away while pregnant. And I thought, I wonder if that's going to affect her. I wonder what she's going to do if that happens. And it did happen. My milk supply basically went away for the most part. I never heard any swallowing when Morgan nursed past, I would say the 5th month of my pregnancy. I never felt a letdown. I never heard any swallowing. I never saw any signs of milk. Her consumption of other foods went, skyrocketed, and other liquids. And so I thought, okay, but she kept on nursing. It was such a comfort to her, and maybe she was getting some milk and I just couldn't detect the signs of it, that it didn't seem to slow her down at all. She just ate more of other foods. And then when Sage was born, And Morgan nursed during my labor, by the way, and I think helped the labor, by nursing.
I'd love to hear about that a little bit, because what I'm curious to know is, was your labor stalled and you made a conscious decision, hey, come here, hop on board, Morgan? Or was, she just around and interested and wanted to, and as a result, you realized that it helped to move things along?
It was more the latter. I had, it wasn't exactly stalled, but it was just sort of off and on, it hadn't really settled into a serious pattern of contractions yet. And, I was getting a little tired because, lots of hours were going by, and Morgan was kneeling on my bed, which is kind of a high bed, and I was standing at the side of the bed, sort of leaning over with my hands on the bed, and she knelt up and, kind of rised up on her knees and nursed. And that's just because she wanted to, she asked if she could nurse, and so I let her nurse. And then while she was nursing, I had a powerful contraction, and it suddenly made me realize, oh, this is different. This is really strong.
You're like,
Yeah, things that make you go, It's
yes,
like, oh,
yes.
okay, this is the real thing. This is really happening now. And it was I don't remember how long of a nursing session it was. It was probably just a few minutes, but I thought to myself, whoa, there it is. And then from that point forward, the contractions were strong, the contractions were regular, things were definitely down to business.
Now, the people who were with you at the birth, was anybody weirded out by that? What did Mark have any thoughts about that? Your midwife or any family members?
About Morgan nursing?
Right.
No, I think at that point it was probably just Mark. I don't think the midwife had come over yet. And, but even if she had, or even if, the other people that I invited to the birth were there, they wouldn't have thought anything of it. They knew, that Morgan was still going strong, and they knew that I was, kind of thinking, hey, this is going to be a tandem nursing experience once the baby comes. And so I don't think that would have fazed them at all.
Explain that to us a little bit about tandem nursing. What is that?
Tandem nursing is when you have two children, or I suppose more, of different ages who are both nursing. And so you've got one child, and then the next one comes along, and you nurse both of them, even though they're at different stages in their lives.
And now, since Morgan was pretty tenacious nursing throughout your pregnancy, did you just kind of slide along and wait for it to happen, or did you do any purposeful reading about tandem nursing, or were you interested in talking to other mothers and gaining their insight to tandem nursing?
Oh, I'm the type that likes to research, and so I definitely talked to whoever I could find and read whatever I could find, and just kind of put a lot of thought into it leading up to it. I also thought about, is it going to be hard on me? Do I really want to do this? And one decision that we did make kind of midway through my pregnancy was to night wean Morgan. I thought to myself that nursing day and night with both babies might be a little much. And so we had been co-sleeping with Morgan and nursing throughout the night. And I thought, I want to be able to do this with my new baby and, have Morgan be a little bit more independent from me during the night. And that didn't mean on her own, but it meant, more willing to go to daddy. And so during that second half of the pregnancy, we worked, in a gradual way towards having her be tended to by Mark throughout the night, whenever possible, instead of by me. Because if it was by me, it was going to involve nursing. And
Right, because you got the goods, right?
exactly. And there, I remember a rough period of about 2 weeks where she cried, and wanted me, and instead got him, and wasn't all that happy about not being able to be with me and nurse during the night. And then she settled into that new routine, and she was okay. And so we did make that conscious decision to, accommodate the tandem nursing and the new baby in that way.
I would love if you can think of one thing, one little tip that you could pass on to the next mom with regards to what you did for the night weaning, because as a lactation consultant, sadly, I hear more mothers talk about quote unquote cutting their baby off totally just because A, they think they need to, or they just don't think that they can handle the 24/7 with two, and they give it a little try. They try the nighttime weaning, and they give it once or twice, and it doesn't work. And I talk a lot about it. Hey, this may be quite a few months process, and I always say gradually with love. So do you have a tip or two that you would share with mothers so that if they do desire to nurse both babies but cannot figure out the night, they just don't even think that it can work, or they don't give it enough time, what would you tell them?
Start early enough so that it can be gradual. Don't expect to accomplish this in a week. I started about halfway through the pregnancy, I would say, and I still nursed her to sleep at the beginning of the night. And then once she was soundly asleep, I would let her be, and I would go to a different part of the house. And then when Morgan would wake up, Mark would be the one to go to her. It's not like we expected her to go 12 hours without mommy starting the first day. Not at all. It was just so much more gradual than that. And if she was particularly inconsolable, then we gave up. And I would nurse her, and I would hold her and be with her. And that was just what needed to happen for all of us. And so I would tell another mom who's thinking about this, don't think that you're a failure if you need to not do that for a night or many nights. If you need to go be with your baby and nurse your baby, then do it. And, you haven't, ruined the night weaning process or anything like that. Everything is 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And, you try again tomorrow night, and don't beat yourself up over that. Listen to your baby.
And that's wonderful advice, because I think sometimes we, whether it comes from ourselves or other people, we tend to be it needs to happen quick and easy, and or it's black or white, and that's it. And so I just love, I think that your stories are going to be powerful to mothers who are going through this process, and which is one of the reasons I love to talk to moms and have them hear other people's stories, because they're listening to you and getting a lot of aha moments, I bet, and also thinking, hey, they did that, and she's coming from a place of having this baby who is just loving nursing, and she was able to work it out, and therefore so can I. Thanks for that.
You're very, very welcome. And I have to give a lot of the credit to Mark, too, and to Morgan. Although she, was probably an unwilling participant, she was able to make it work too. And, she didn't like it, but she adjusted to it, and it became her new normal. And then she was fine with it. And, we nursed when the sun was up, as we usually said. Is the sun awake? Okay, we can have nurses, And so, yeah, hats off to all of us.
That's so cute. I like that. The sun is up, we can have nurses. One of the things I'd love to know is, throughout all your breastfeeding experience, and I'm so glad so many things went so wonderful for you, and even when it goes wonderful, most of us still have a tough time, or just something that happened that we thought, geez, I just, even if you have 1 or 2 bad nights in a row, you sometimes have these thoughts, I don't know if I can keep doing this anymore. And for many of us, it's not that we really mean it, but we definitely have those thoughts. And for some moms, things are so bad, you're really thinking about quitting. So I'm wondering if you've had any of those kinds of times, and if so, how you felt about it and what helped you turn the corner.
I had a lot of confidence, and I had seen people who nursed for a long, long time when I lived in Chad. And I thought, I think that's what I'm going to do. And for the most part, that helped me keep going. But there were some times that were hard. And that early time right after Morgan's birth, when I was sore, that was hard. And, I think I don't think I really thought about quitting, but I thought, dang, this really hurts. This really hurts. And I kind of just gritted my teeth and got through it until the latch improved and I was able to heal. And by the way, to everybody listening, don't do that. Go get some help. It was very unfortunate that I didn't think to go get help to improve the latch right away. So there's no need to suffer through that, but I did. And I remember thinking, this is really, really hard. And then once Sage was born, it was hard to nurse too sometimes. And I felt like there was one or two babies in my arms, on my lap, laying by my side, touching me 23 out of 24 hours of the day. and I thought to myself, I think I need a little space, and I remember feeling, gosh, I need some space. I need some room, I need some time away from my babies. And so that was hard. And what helped then was having a little space from them, handing them over to dad or another family member, or once we moved to Pennsylvania and we had no other family members, we actually hired a babysitter from time to time, and I got the space I needed, and that's what helped me turn that corner. Something else that happened to me, and Lori, I don't know if I've ever really shared this with you, is that I did suffer from postpartum depression. And that started after Morgan was born, and I struggled with it kind of silently on my own. I think Mark was really the only one that really knew at first, and I struggled for a long time without help. And I finally got help when the kids were about 1.5 and 3.5 years old. And I finally got some counseling and medication, and that turned that corner for me, and it helped me with regard to breastfeeding just because I was happier once I started treating my depression. And it made me realize that, hey, I can do this, be the kind of mom that I want to be, and not suffer from feelings of sadness as well. So I would say to anybody who's, kind of worried that maybe their feelings aren't bouncing back the way they should, and it's more than baby blues, to seek help really quickly. Don't wait, go find some help.
I know for many women, that's a really tough thing to share. So I appreciate that. And I'm also going to even take that a step further. And this is where you can take a pass. I'm wondering if you had that, just that deepest, darkest moment that, what changed your mindset to reach out for help? Did you reach a really dark, deep place?
I did. I remember, I think this was before Sage was born. I remember lying face down on the bed, sobbing, and Mark saying, I'm calling your mom. I'm going to call your mom. And me saying, don't call her. No, don't do it. I don't want anybody to know.
Aww.
And I didn't let him, and he didn't call her. And so that was a wake-up call to me that, he feels like we need help. We need to reach out, and the two of us aren't enough to fix this. And so that was a wake-up call, but I didn't heed that call. I still didn't reach out at that point in time. And then things got more stressful, when Sage came along, a new baby, harder to make everything happen that needs to happen. And on top of the emotions and the depression and the brain chemistry that went into the depression, we were planning to move away from Arizona and move to Pennsylvania. This was for Mark's residency. And I knew that all of my support systems were going to fall away. And that's when I realized, and I remember distinctly, it was the kids' birthday when they turned 1 and 3 that June, and we were going to be moving within weeks. I was snapping at my babies and everybody and just couldn't get it together, and realized I've got to find help. And I did here in Arizona attend a couple of counseling sessions, but then we were moving. And so I just barely started to build that support, and then we left it behind and we had to start all over again. And then in Pennsylvania, I thought, I don't even have mom to go to. I've got to get some help. And so I started looking into it, and I found a counselor, and things went so much better once I started getting treated.
I'm so glad you did, because young kids and having a wonderful support system, still having a bit of a time, and then moving away. That's, even when things are going swimmingly well, that's a major stress for parents and for moms with young kids.
Yes. They always say, moving is right up there on the top 3 or something of things that are stressful in life. And it certainly was.
Yes. All right. Well, I really do appreciate you. You probably have no idea what your reach is going to be and how many people you're going to help. And one never knows how many moms will reach out for help just listening to you share your story. So I really appreciate that.
Well, I'm glad to do it now. I wouldn't always have been glad to be open about it, but I think that's what held me back from getting help, was that there was a stigma, and I didn't want anybody to know, because I don't know, would they judge me, think less of me? Or, I don't know why I held back for so long. But now I realize it's not a shameful thing. It's the same as if you needed help with a broken leg. You have something going on, you find professional assistance, and you move towards healing. And, that's really important to try and remove the stigma. So that's why I'm happy to talk about it now.
And logically speaking, and having space away from that, of course, you know that now. What I love about you sharing your story is that you may have even known that then, but then there's that emotional mind and all the stigma. And in addition to that, by the way, just to mention again, because you've also said a little bit about it, but you're living with a husband who's a med student, right?
Yeah.
And you're very, very close to your parents. So if anybody was going to feel okay and share this experience, if we had a poster child for it, you would probably be it. And yet you still had that very, very common stigma. So there are things that it doesn't matter really what's going on in our life. What matters what's going on in our mind and in our head. And you went through something very common, and which is why I just think the more you talk about it, the more other mothers hear you talk about it, and other mothers, that it will help give them that little push in the right direction.
Well, I hope it does.
What are some things that you have learned with reference to breastfeeding that you would like other mothers to know? Is there some things that when you see other mothers, now that you're away from nursing your young ones, and you hear what they say, you watch and you observe, is there anything that you would like for them to know that you learned?
I'd say first and foremost, if you're having any trouble at all in those early days, find yourself an amazing lactation consultant and, overcome that as best you can. Don't try to go it alone. There's people who know how to help you and definitely get help if you do need it. And then I guess the other thing would be, if baby's doing well, if your baby is growing and seems happy and all of those signs are good, don't worry about timing and sides, switching right and left, and what side did I do last time? And, if the baby is doing well, you can sort of relax a little bit and trust that the baby is getting what they need. So I'd say just enjoy it and try not to put too many rules in place, unless, of course, you're trying to overcome a specific problem or a baby is struggling to gain or something like that. But if everybody's healthy, then relax and enjoy it. It's just a natural part of a baby's world and a new mother's world, and just go with it.
It sounds so simple, and yet I love that you share that, because so many of us are missing that. We literally need someone to verbalize that to us. Putting aside anything medical or something not going well, is to just take a look at your baby. And if things are going well, I always say to moms, just take a chill pill. Don't worry about all the timing and everything. It's so that's really great advice. The other thing that I wanted to bring up was, I know that you learned it along the way, and at the same time, we met when you started working at a local breastfeeding store here in Phoenix, and I was the IBCLC on staff. And so I'm wondering if part of your really knowledgeable place that you come from now is seeing so many mothers walk into the store looking to buy creams and pads and all of the kinds of things to kind of fix those sore, cracked, bleeding nipples. And you really saw the benefit of them, of saying, well, you might need these things, but you also need to see someone who's going to sit down with you, take an hour, just you and the baby, and evaluate. And then the other things that you're purchasing can be a supportive help in healing. But if you get help with the root of the problem, that will be tremendous start in the right direction. So is that where you also got some of that strong part of you that says, get help?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I had that background of being so fortunate to have lived in a place where breastfeeding was the norm. And, here, we're kind of trying to move back towards that, but we're still not there. We don't get to see nursing a whole lot up close and personal as we grow up and, and watch our friends have their babies and stuff. It's not always, available to watch and observe and learn in a natural way. And I got to see that when I lived overseas. And so I thought to myself, these people don't need anything, they're just nursing with no devices, and it's working out really great, and so stateside, it was a little bit strange for me to work at a place that sold all of these things that some people thought might be necessary in order to successfully nurse, and really, just like you said, having assistance if you need it, and knowledge and preparation is really more important than needing to get a lot of gear, and I'm not saying that the gear has no place, because it certainly does, and it has been instrumental in helping some nursing couples, get past problems. But for most people, there's, no equipment necessary. Just some good knowledge and help is the main thing.
Baby in the boob.
That's right.
for some baby in the boob. Tressa, if you could go back and put your arms around your newly postpartum self and whisper just one thing in your ear, what words of wisdom would you tell yourself?
I think I would say they're going to be okay. Your babies are, you're doing everything just fine, and they're going to be okay. So don't worry.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. I have a huge sense of humor about all things related to breastfeeding. It just, my own personality comes from my own personal experience, but also working as an IBCLC. I see that the moms and dads who have a good sense of humor seem, just like other things in life, seem to be able to get through the hard times better than others. So I just like to put a whole bunch of sense of humor in things related to breastfeeding. So I would love to know if there's anything particularly funny that one of your kids said about something related to breastfeeding that you remember.
I was racking my brain trying to think if I could remember a sound bite or something like that. And I'm not sure. I think I just something that comes to mind is Morgan calling it, actually both kids, Morgan and Sage, calling it nurses. There being no mistaking what they were talking about.
So you didn't give them any little hidden words like to say cup when they wanted to nurse.
I didn't plan that out. No. We had for a little while when Morgan was just learning how to talk, she came up with her own word, which sounded like the word sauce. And what it came from was me saying other side, asking, do you want to switch to the other side? And I would just say other side. And she would try to mimic me and say osa, osa. And then it somehow got changed to just saw. And then it got changed to sauce. And so when she would ask to nurse or ask to switch, she would say sauce. And part of me wishes that I had kept that going, because what a cute word for nursing.
It's cute. It kind of sounds like it took the life of that game Telephone. Like you start off with one thing, and it goes to the fifth person, and it comes out something else.
Yes, yeah.
But that's so cute. I love
it.
That.
It's cute, but instead, we mainly called it nurses, and so yes, even as they got older, and I might have been a little bit embarrassed in front of some company about them asking to nurse. There was no hiding what they were asking for.
Actually, I think that's cool. You just called it what it was. Right?
Yep.
With everything that you did with breastfeeding, when I talk to moms, I find out that there's some things, I call them like closet breastfeeders, related to some part of their breastfeeding. Do you have any confessions, something that you never told anybody about your breastfeeding experience, of course, until now?
I guess, I don't know if I've ever mentioned that I did taste my own milk.
All right. Well, that's a biggie, because not too many people are going to be too excited to share that with someone.
I mean, I was so curious. I had to know.
That begs the question. Do you remember what it tasted like?
It was very, very sweet, and it seemed thin. I didn't have a big gulp or anything, just a couple of drops, but I remember thinking, oh, this is very, very sweet.
Well, I mean, I think that's pretty cool. Can you imagine not going through your whole breastfeeding experience, having your kids have gallons and gallons of milk, and never actually tasting that food yourself?
No, I can't. That's why I had to give it a try.
And you know what? I really wanted to come full circle with your breastfeeding experience. So can you share with all about breastfeeding listeners how long your kids nursed?
Sure. So when Sage came along, Morgan was 2. She turned 2 the day before Sage was born. So their birthdays are 2 years and 1 day apart. And, when my milk came in 2 days after Sage was born, Sage was nursing at the time. We were at her pediatrician's office having her first well baby check. And all of a sudden I heard the swallowing. And I thought, hallelujah, it's back. My milk had been gone for months or mostly gone. I don't know if it was 100% gone, but like I had said before, I never heard any swallowing. And all of a sudden there was that letdown. There was that swallowing. The milk was back. Morgan had never stopped nursing. And so I kind of wondered, is she going to react to there suddenly being milk again? And the only reaction was that she started swallowing too. And all of a sudden she didn't need quite as much other food.
So the fireworks are going off for you, and your kids are just, happy little campers.
Yeah. So we did the tandem nursing thing, and things didn't go quite as smoothly for Sage. And I was grateful for your help, Lori, during the time when Sage wasn't quite gaining as much weight as we thought maybe she should. And we kind of wondered, is Morgan taking the lion's share, and really worked on making sure that Sage got enough. And I remember renting the scale and weighing her before and after feedings and worrying about her and hating every time she spit up, because I thought, you need to keep that inside of you. What are you doing?
Back.
Yeah. So we struggled a little bit, but we made it past that and just kept on going. And I never made a conscious decision to wean, except for the night weaning of Morgan that I told you about. Although there were times when I would say no. And I would say, not now. Let's wait a little bit. Just like with anything your child asks for once they get a little bit older, they don't need to have it right away. And so it wasn't an on-demand thing the way it had been when they were infants. And the years went by, and I remember, I don't know why Morgan got this in her head, but she thought that when she turned 5, she would have to wean. I never told her that, so I don't know why she thought that. But shortly after her 5th birthday, she said, I really want to keep going. And I was like, sure, why not? And so she did. She kept going. Now, by this time, it was few and far between. And I don't remember the exact last time that Morgan nursed, but I want to say she was probably 6. Give or take, probably in her 6th year. And Sage kept on going. She's 2 years younger. And we probably had 2 or 3 years just me and Sage nursing. I think Sage was 6 or maybe even 7 when she nursed for the last time. And she claims, and now she's 10. She just turned 10. She claims that she still hasn't weaned. She says, I am not. I call her a weanling sometimes. You're a little weanling. And she says, no, I'm not. I never weaned. And I said, oh, you did? And she's like, no, I still nurse. I still want to nurse. And the times that she has playfully tried, she has no idea what she's doing. But according to her, she hasn't weaned yet. But I'd say it's been at least 3 years.
And there's so much stigma around that also. And of course, as your mommy, you're going to say all great and wonderful things, but I've seen you, hung out with your kids. A lot of people are so concerned that the kids will never sleep on their own, potty on their own, go to school on their own, separate, become independent little beings. So I would love for you to just share just a minute or two about Morgan and Sage and what makes them great and wonderful and what they're involved in school and how smart and intelligent and independent, cute little girls they are.
Oh, well, they're all that and more. They're just growing up so beautifully and amazingly. They're going to be in 5th grade and 7th grade next school year, and they're both in the gifted program. Morgan's, really heavily involved in karate and very serious about it and moving up in the ranks with that. Sage is very much involved with Girl Scouts. And, they both played instruments and, go away to camp and things like that. They're definitely growing and maturing and gaining independence in a way that I think seems perfectly appropriate. We do still co-sleep to a certain degree. And I'll be curious to see how much longer that lasts. I don't think we have too much more of that in our future. Morgan's on the cusp of being a young lady, and she's perfectly capable of sleeping on her own, has done it here and there, but prefers to snuggle as she goes to sleep. And, I'm going to cherish that for as long as we have it. And Sage definitely doesn't like to be alone at night. And for the most part, the two of them sleep together. And then sometimes one of them ends up in our bed or we end up in one of their beds. And that's fine with us. I do work at night, so sometimes it can be a problem sometimes if Mark is working and I'm working. And for some reason, it's usually Sage at this point would wake up in the night and need some company or want some company. Sometimes that's a little bit of a challenge figuring that out. So they're not 100% independent sleepers. And I think that's okay. I think that it's more the norm the world over. And it's really kind of our culture that sees it as a problem. But what I observed overseas, and I know it's true in other countries as well, is the family bed and, people not being alone at night and kind of being strange to expect that of our children. So, that's still part of our lives as a family. But the girls are doing great and, maturing and, have wonderful expectations for them and full of promise.
So it is Tinethevin, Tandem, who wrote a wonderful book called The Family Bed. And I'm thrilled that you helped to put that into context because it really is a cultural thing. And when parents get a little freaked out about it, I often say, how old are you? I'm 38. How old is your husband? 42. When you put the baby in their room, whether it's a newborn, a 6-month-old, a 3-year-old, or a 10-year-old, or a 12-year-old, and you put them in their room, close the light, close the door, what do you do when you go to bed? Oh, I go to bed. With who? My husband. Oh. And it makes them just think a little bit about it. So we as adults enjoy laying down and cuddling with another person, right?
Absolutely.
So it definitely is a cultural thing, and neither of us are about pushing anybody into doing anything, but we do just like to mention it definitely is a cultural thing. And I think that, your girls are very, very fortunate because you're just going to let them do their own thing, follow what feels most comfortable. And I also like what you said that, everything isn't always pretty and easy. And there's sometimes when both of you are working and it's challenging. But you also mentioned about nursing at a certain times and that there's a time that you could be somewhat disciplined about it. We're not going to give our child the 10th cookie just because they want it. And sometimes they can't have everything age appropriate, exactly the time that they want it. And we need to work it out. It doesn't mean that everything is that it's all a perfect world, that we're constantly working and juggling and thinking things through and watching what our kids are doing and hopefully as best as we can in the context of it all, following their lead.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's important. And, just, looking at them and saying, is this a want or is this a need, and sometimes it's hard to tell, does Sage want to be with me in the middle of the night, the wee hours of the morning right now, or does she need to? And I think it's, it's sort of both, and you have to respect that. And everything that goes with parenting, you're constantly trying to figure out, am I being, am I making the right decision? Am I being too strict? Am I not being strict enough? And am I raising them up in the right way? And we're always kind of trying to improve that. And nobody has all of the answers, but we just have to do, what feels right in that moment. And of course, we can look back and second guess ourselves. And everybody does that all the time. But
coulda, woulda, shoulda,
exactly.
Right?
But, really, everything kind of has to happen in the moment.
Well, Tressa, I thank you ever so much. And we're about to say goodbye to each other. And one more thing that I'd love to know is, and of course you can take a pass on this too, but if there is a listener who would want to contact you and ask you anything about your experiences, do you want me to add to the show notes a way for them to contact you via email?
That would be absolutely fine. You can definitely put my email address in there, and anyone who has, questions or would like to chat, I would be happy to do so.
Sure, just tell us what it is.
My email address is T for Tressa, LRAPPOLD. That's TL Rappold at AOL.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Tressa, my good friend. We really appreciate all the time and information you lovingly shared with all of our breastfeeding listeners. I appreciate you.
Well, thank you very much, Lori. It's been good to talk about all this. I've enjoyed it.
All About Breastfeeding listeners, stay tuned for this information. We have 2 contests going on at All About Breastfeeding. Here is exactly what you need to do for the first contest to win a free boba wrap. Head over to allaboutbreastfeeding.biz. Download your free guide to breastfeeding your baby. Your name and email will be entered into the contest. At the end of the month, one lucky winner will receive their free boba wrap. Easy peasy, right? The next contest has to do with my introduction. I love my introduction. However, I would like it to sound more upbeat, playful, and perhaps with a few sound effects. I'm wondering if any of my All About Breastfeeding listeners would like to give it a try. I'd love to open this up to All About Breastfeeding listeners and see what you could do with this script. If you feel you can do better and want to have some fun with this, and would like to win a box full of baby and breastfeeding products, go for it. Here is what you do and how you go about sending in your tape. First, go to allaboutbreastfeeding.biz/contact me. In the subject line, put in the words intro contest, and I will send you the script and any other info you need to show me what you got.